Hello everyone, this is CJ with Cycletron. Today I'd like to talk about one of my favorite classes of motorcycles, and that's the Sport Tour. So I'll start out defining what I consider to be a sport touring motorcycle. It's not a rigid classification, but I'll take a shot at it anyway to give you some guidance on how my thinking has evolved about these bikes over the years. So first of all, what is not a sport touring motorcycle is something like my 2019 Street Glide Special. This is a 2021 Street Glide Special with custom paint. If you want to do long distance riding in comfort, particularly 2-up, this is the way to go. But tipping the scales at over 830 pounds, it's clearly not a sport touring motorcycle. But you can do easily 600 mile days on this bike and feel relatively fresh. But back in the day, I had a 1993 Yamaha GTS 1000. It was really technologically advanced. Even though it was slightly detuned, it was 100 horsepower. It seemed like it had a ton of power to me. Really great bike, shaft drive, but at 100 horsepower, wasn't the greatest, although I didn't realize it until I bought a replacement model of this bike about 3 years ago. I got the exact model and it had 100 horsepower and weighing in about 615 pounds. It felt pretty sluggish given all the sport bikes I've been riding over the years. So that got me thinking exactly how would I define a sport touring motorcycle. So I'll start out, I think you need to be under 650 pounds for the most part. You need to have at least 120 horsepower, which means you're probably going to be at or above 1100 cc's in engine displacement. And to emphasize the more touring side of the segment, I think shaft drive is preferable, although you can trade out for more sportiness with the chain drive, which we'll get into here in a bit. So let's talk about what I consider to be some of the main sport touring motorcycles. You have the BMW R1250 RT. It's a beautiful bike, shaft drive. New, these bikes are coming in at the low $20,000 mark. You know, these types of bikes have been around for many, many years. In fact, we'll see that with a couple models from other manufacturers. These bikes have really been refined over a period of decades. Then you've got Yamaha FJR 1300. Again, really sleek bike. They've updated it with all the electronic rider aids here over the years. Again, shaft drive. You know, these bikes are pumping out well over 120 horsepower. Then you've got the Kawasaki Concours. This bike's been around for decades. It's a 1400cc bike, very well-established motorcycle. Relatively affordable. I mean, you can get one of these new for around $14,000, but it doesn't have all the latest whiz-bang gadgetry, and it is pushing this around 700 pounds in weight, so it's not exactly nimble. But again, a very solid sport tourer, and again another shaft drive motorcycle. So, you know, in the range of 15 to low 20s, you can get a well-established model from BMW, Yamaha, or Kawasaki that fits the bill for what I consider a classic sport touring motorcycle. You can get more into the sporty end of the segment, and I love what Suzuki has done here. They've come out with the 2022 GSX S1000 GT. So it's the GSX 1000 engine, same engine that's on my 2020 Katana. I absolutely love that bike, by the way. But you know, these bikes are much lighter in weight. You know, the bikes with the shaft drive tend to be heavier, around the 600 pound mark. My Katana weighs 475 pounds, and with saddlebags and the windscreen and more fairing and 2-gallon larger gas tank at 5 gallons, this bike weighs 499 pounds. So you're getting a 150 horsepower machine in something that's right at 500 pounds. So excellent power to weight ratio. Then you can go to something like a KTM Super Duke 1290. This thing, again, low $20,000 price tag, and you're pushing 175 horsepower with this bike. And then Kawasaki has a full range of Ninjas that you can equip with saddlebags. So by definition, they'd be sport tours, according to my definition anyway, because you're going to have over 120 horsepower. You're going to be under that 600-pound weight mark for the most part. Excellent handling characteristics with the saddlebags. But I guess conventionally for Kawasaki, I would consider something like a Ninja 1000 SX with saddlebags to be a more traditional sport touring motorcycle. And then you can go up to something pretty wild like the Ninja H2 SX SE supercharged motorcycle. That's going to set you back around $25,000, but you're going to come in at 200 horsepower on this thing. If you look up Honda sport touring motorcycles, they're going to land you on their page with the gold wings. Now, these aren't sport tours in my mind. They're way too heavy, well over 800 pounds. So then, something that I would consider to be at the borderline of a sport touring motorcycle would be the Honda NT 1100. You can get that in the DCT transmission, but it's only about 100 horsepower. It's pretty heavy. It's over 500 pounds. So again, I'm going to call these more alternative sport touring motorcycles, or a smaller segment of a general sport touring motorcycle. Again, if you're going to be riding mostly back roads, not doing long distance highway rides consistently, you're not trying to do 600-mile rides all the time, a bike like this could suit you just fine. The same would be true of Yamaha's Tracer 900. Now, this engine's based on the 900cc triple that I had my FC09. I love that bike, but I wouldn't consider that a sport touring bike. I wouldn't want to do long distance riding on that for any length of time. So again, it depends on a lot of things too, including the weight of you and your passenger. My wife and I one time rode my Ducati Multistrada. It was a 1200cc V-twin liquid cooled bike, and we ended up going like 700 miles in a 24-hour period, and she was miserable. You know, that bike only weighs 500 pounds, so combined weight of my wife and I, say around 400 pounds on a bike that weighs 500 pounds, you're eating up a lot of the available gross vehicle weight rating with the rider, the passenger, and the luggage. So that can really downgrade a lot of your sportiness on a bike. So again, if you're a solo rider, or you've got a whisper thin passenger and you're not doing a lot of distance in a given day, maybe something like this could really fit the bill. I'm going to throw this in here because it has saddlebags and it's a sport bike, and it's a Ducati Super Sport S. This bike has over 100 horsepower and only comes in at 400 pounds. Now, for a lot of highway riding, I prefer to have a bike that weighs in excess of 500 pounds just to handle wind blasts from passing semi-trucks. But again, if you're going to be back road bound, and especially if you're a solo rider and not going crazy distance each day, this is definitely a viable sport tour. So this is a different segment than a lot of people think of nowadays. Of course, sport touring motorcycles have been around for a long time, but that market share has dwindled due to the ascent of the adventure touring motorcycles. Now, the adventure touring motorcycles have a much more upright riding position. The sport touring bikes obviously shift some of the rider's weight to their palms and their forearms and shoulders, and actually that can be pretty comfortable. It's common, I think it's a common misconception that if you're leaned over at all, it makes for a less comfortable riding position. And I don't agree with that. You actually are taking some of the weight off your lower back by shifting it forward, and also you're reducing the wind blast. So I'm not talking about being stretched clear over the tank like a hyper racer or just an extremely aggressive sport bike riding style. But again, these sport tours really split the difference, leaning a little bit forward on the rider position, reducing some of the wind blast, and basically tightening in the rider's position for more maneuverability. So again, I really love this class of motorcycle. So let me know what you all think.